Hey everyone, Sajeel Qureshi here with another episode of RevOps 500. Today I am super stoked to be talking to a principal software engineer at HubSpot, Thomas Baseley. Welcome to RevOps 500, man.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. I'm actually a solutions engineer, so I don't you
YouTube engineer.
don't.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right. Well, anyways, Thomas, what is your biggest mistake?
Yeah, so really good question. There's a lot of obviously personal mistakes that I could put maybe from a professional level. Before I got into tech, I was actually working in kind of the music industry or in and around the music industry. So I was living in the UK still, and I was initially in a band when I still had some hair. Obviously, that's a long time ago now, unfortunately. Sniff. And then I did various kind of bits and pieces afterwards trying to break into the music industry. And I would say maybe the first mistake that comes into my mind is for a very short period of time, I was kind of managing an artist that I'd kind of found in a kind of grotty London pub. And I would say the mistake I made was I worked with this guy basically for free for quite a long time, put a lot of time and effort and obviously finance as well, because I was kind of financing everything to kind of get him to break through. And unfortunately, the mistake I made was I didn't put any kind of contract in place to kind of protect myself. And it seems obvious to me now, but the obvious thing happened was that, somebody came along with a lot of money and basically, I was no longer in the picture and I had absolutely no kind of contract, in place, at that point, to kind of claim anything back or protect my position in any way possible. So I would say the big mistake that I made was maybe putting too much trust in people and thinking that that was enough, and that, everything that I'd put in up until then was enough basically to protect myself. And that, even though we were quite good friends, that I was not, there was no way that I was going to get screwed over. And maybe in looking back on it now, I see how naive it was, unfortunately, and the world doesn't work that way. And I would definitely recommend, if anyone's listening to this, to, even if you're, if you wanted to launch a business or, going, do anything like that with friends, I would always say, really try and protect yourself and make sure there's some kind of agreement, some kind of contract in place, just in case, anything goes wrong. Things can change very, very quickly, especially when there's money involved. And the second thing maybe comes into mind, and this is maybe like, from the start of my tech career, especially, was around, maybe when you're applying for your first job as a junior, and you're going into kind of that interview process, very much in terms of the mindset. I was very much in this maybe slightly introverted point of view and introverted mindset, and I had very little confidence in myself, and I would say that I had a lot of imposter syndrome at that stage in my career. And I was kind of not feeling like I was feeling like there was an imbalance in power when you're kind of going into an interview. And I always did very, very poorly in interviews because I was kind of intimidated, and I was not feeling, I wasn't really feeling like it was like a mutual kind of agreement that was being put in place. And I remember that somebody gave me some really, really good advice. And they said to think of it, very much, like a mutual kind of situation where you're bringing something to the table, they're bringing something to the table, and it's very much like a business agreement, and to give yourself a lot more confidence, and it's very much you are there because you have to prove yourself, and you're going to be bringing value to that company. And, in terms of like an ROI calculation, if you will, the investment that you're going to be bringing back to them, the return on investment is going to be far greater than, the kind of salary they're going to be offering you at that stage in your career. So I would say that was quite a big mistake, because up until that point, I was kind of maybe seeing it from the wrong perspective, and it was probably not giving me, not putting me in the best light in an interview kind of scenario.
Okay, so you got two mistakes on the table. The first one being that you worked with a friend of yours and they got a record deal, I guess, or they made it big, and there was no no return for you for that, or other people came in the future and they kind of split the two of you up. That's pretty entertaining. I mean, I gotta admit I'd love to unpack that one. The other one is that you seem like you were timid, in doing interviews and knowing your worth or whatever, because
Exactly.
a lot of these people are doing you a favor by hiring you. It's kind of like both ways.
Mm.
You're helping them, they're helping you. It's mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
So I see those as kind of related almost, right? I mean, where
Yeah.
maybe your friend, you're doing him a favor, but or he's doing you a favor, right? But maybe you didn't have that contract in place that you feel like maybe you needed. I'm guessing the first mistake happened,
Yeah.
like the music one happened first, and then the tech career one happened second. Did you draw back on that first one at all when you were going through this whole thing and when you had the information that you coming your way, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, like, I think you're absolutely right. Those two things are very much created, and I guess it's around like self-worth and like how much you value your contribution. And I think I've always been somebody that's kind of gone that extra mile, and and I would say maybe, one thing, I know a lot of people work like that, but one thing to be aware of is there's always people that kind of like take advantage of that. Unfortunately, that's kind of the world we live in. And so, if you are one of those kind of people, you need to make sure that, you're not being taken advantage of, and but mostly, most importantly, that you know your self-worth, you know the value that you can bring to a situation, to a business, to, it can be applied to any number of situations. And that you get your just worth out of that. Yeah.
So how do you obviously this is like a bad habit of yours, maybe that you don't necessarily value your contributions to society or to your job or whatever. I mean, like, how do you challenge it? How do you make sure to remind yourself of your of your value that you have?
I think it's a continuing process, and I don't think it's uniquely to me. It's for anyone that's kind of growing in their career, especially you're trying to work your way up, and it is like a constant learning process, isn't it? It's something that's complete. It evolves every single day. But I think it's always really, really important to look back and look at where you came from. That's really, really important. It's not just about looking forward, but taking the time to look back at where you've come from, the different mistakes that you've made along the way, the different people as well. Not just negatives, but also positives. There are definitely key moments in your life or your career that can change everything. They're like a balance, and everything, almost like hinges on that moment. And that was definitely the case in my perspective. So it's also really, really good as well to look back at those key moments and remind yourself of those, and almost use that as almost like a driver and motivation going forward. Yeah.
And can you relate anything from your time in the music industry to your job in solutions engineering at HubSpot at all, or no? Is there any carryover, any sort of? You're smiling and laughing, so I'm guessing there's a good story somewhere.
Oh, there's lots of good stories. I don't know if there's many that I can actually tell that are, I think we were all, it was a great experience. We didn't really make any money, but we were all young, fresh out of college, and kind of raring to kind of see the world, and experience things and meet people. I would definitely say that it was more of like a relationship side of things. So my job is very much like customer facing now. So not just customer facing, actually more, in general. It's also, working with our like partner network, our kind of integrator network, doing marketing events, and but also, mostly like meeting prospects, meeting customers, and speaking with them on a daily basis, understanding, how they operate. And I would say maybe the relationship side of things and the communication side is obviously like fundamental to that role. So I would say that that's something that I could definitely draw from in terms of like the music industry. It is about like creating your network, creating your brand as musicians. And that's more and more the case now, because obviously the music industry has evolved so much that it's very much, for a lot of bands, they have to do it on their own for a lot of the time. They have to construct that fan base ready to go before like a record label will come along or a manager will come along and pick them up. It's very much like, you, especially with obviously like social media now, you need to create that brand and that buzz around you, and what you're doing. And I guess, you could link that as well to what I'm doing now. And it's definitely something that I was not comfortable with at the start, kind of networking and going out there and meeting people. Obviously, like I said, like I'm quite an introverted person normally. So that's definitely something I had to work on, and it is very, very important in the music industry. Yeah, definitely.
So, and look, this is common amongst, engineers of all kinds, right? They do a lot of the heavy lifting, but they don't necessarily, get the credit. They're usually, maybe they're self-proclaimed introverts for sure, and they've definitely felt like they don't always get their worth. So I mean, you have a lot of those traits in your story and in even what you're telling me here. And I guess, like, what would your message be to engineers like that who feel like, what, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not a marketing person, but I built this integration, or I or I helped, I was on the ground with this person while they were coming up, like, how do you how do you how do people benefit from your story? What do you tell what would you tell a room full of those people if you had them in front of you right now?
I mean, I think it depends really about like the motivation that got them into the job. I'm not really like, particularly looking, I would say maybe like the sales engineers, obviously they play quite a vital role in like the sales process, in major tech companies. And we're kind of almost, I would say maybe if I'm going to, blow my own trumpet a little bit, I would say maybe we're almost like the unsung heroes of the sales process in some ways.
100%.
Yeah, and I would say that it depends really what motivates you. What I get out of the job really is mainly like the satisfaction that you've, especially like the title says itself, like you've found the solution, you've unlocked the solution, or you've understood the business pain that a company is currently having, or where there is a blockage, and resolving that issue can completely change the trajectory of a business, increasing growth, kind of getting rid of the kind of barriers between different teams internally. And so I guess me, on a personal perspective, I kind of like those like Eureka moments where, especially our role as solutions engineers in the kind of sales cycle, if there's people that are listening that don't know what our role is we kind of like the technical consultant that basically works alongside the actual account executive when they're selling selling a contract, and we're the ones that are kind of doing all of the scoping, the discovery, and ultimately the Eureka moment, as I would put it, is basically like a technical demo where you basically put in place and you prove everything that you've understood, all of the kind of pain that you've discovered. And you fit basically that current pain to basically the value that a solution like HubSpot could bring that business, and you kind of make that link and almost like show them a vision of the future. And I really, as somebody, like I said at the start, that goes that extra mile, I really like, that Eureka moment where maybe we go a little bit too far in the personalization sometimes. But, somebody, you've got a number of people obviously on the call and you kind of get that wow moment. And for me, that's very, very, that brings me a lot of value, and a lot of satisfaction in that moment. So, yeah, I would say to those people, it's not, it depends what you came into the job for. And you can make a massive, massive difference without forcibly somebody coming to you and saying thank you, or do you get a massive paycheck at the end of the month, but you're often like a vital cog in that process. So yeah.
So demos are like a really big part of your story. I mean, demos in music, demos in your solutions engineering.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny how that works for you, isn't it? You've got, I mean, I'm sure when you're in music, you probably sent demos out. You probably have a demo reel. We were promoting demo reels, and now in technology, I mean, you're giving sales demos, totally different kind of demo, but a demo nevertheless, and I'm sure you've seen Eureka moments in both the music industry and the tech industry. How
No.
how are how are they the same? How are they different?
I would say you could also draw the line with like performing on stage as
Yeah.
well, because oftentimes
Yeah.
it is a bit like this, that same kind of process. And you know, for these big moments, like these big demos, sometimes you only get one shot.
Yes.
And that's the same, you know, when you're in a young band starting out, often, you know, you'll be doing showcases, for example, for, you know, major labels or whatever, or big festival performances. And you only really get one shot at those, in those kind of situations. You're in front of, you know, an audience that are hard to impress sometimes. And, you know, you could definitely draw parallels with doing demos. Oftentimes you only get one shot and you have to be on your game. You have to perform. And you have to say the right things at the right moments. And it is a lot of the time about key moments. So yeah, I would definitely say there's massive parallels between the two. Yeah.
So obviously, when you're performing on a stage, you know, there's like, you know, there's like punchlines, there's timing, there's, you know, there's everything, right? Like there's certain
Yeah.
things you do, there's certain things you do, certain things you say to kind of rile the audience up and whatever. I'm sure. And then now a sales demo is a very different thing, right? So I mean,
Mm.
but over the time, have you learned from your demos? Okay, when you feel like the eureka moment is going to come, do you time it? Do you kind of do you have pacing? Do you get that in? Do you get that detailed in it, or is it just much more off the cuff and casual?
It's a really, really good question. I would say that maybe when I've planned things out in advance, and you know, it does take quite a lot of planning. You generally know like what are the key features that are going to really get the best reaction. But I would say that a lot, like, you know, when you're performing on stage, there's an element of unpredictability around it, and things can change. Maybe there'll be somebody present that, you know, can throw a spanner in the works, or, you know, change the trajectory of what you've planned. And so you need to kind of adapt around that. And so there is an element as well of kind of spontaneity and having to adapt in certain situations. And maybe the areas or the key moments that you thought were going to land, you know, a punch, so to speak, maybe don't. And so, yeah, no, that's part of, I guess, the fun of it, really, in some ways, is that kind of unpredictability around it, and being somebody that's able to adapt to those kind of situations. But I would say that's definitely very, very much, I don't know if there's any musicians listening, but it does feel very, very similar to you know, to performing on stage. And sometimes, you know, you have to deal with difficult situations. I know I can definitely tell you a few stories around that. But yeah, no, it's definitely very similar.
Yeah, so tell me a few stories about that. Like, I mean, just like maybe let's start with like the in like a sales demo. Like, when have you been expecting applause and got tomatoes or something like that? What's you're kind of nodding and shaking your heads like, what do you got?
There's so many stories. I mean, obviously from a technical perspective, you know, now post COVID, we're doing more and more meetings online, like we're doing right here, right now. And so with that comes certain elements of comfort, you know, having that kind of barrier between you and them. It kind of, in some ways, takes some of the stress away and gives you a certain comfort in terms of like your surroundings and how you can kind of plan for certain eventualities and certain situations. But obviously with technology, you know, technology can go wrong. And so I guess you have to bear that in mind. So it's happened to me a lot, you know, a few times that we've had technical issues, power cuts, or, you know, the usual stuff like people can't connect or people can't turn their audio on, you know, the classics.
Yes.
And then obviously we do as well, obviously, like demos in person as well, presentations in person. And with that as well comes another complexity. You know, we've had a number of times where you turn up to some swanky office somewhere, and, you know, there's no Wi-Fi network, or, you know, the internet's a bit slow today. You don't know what's happening. And sometimes you kind of feel like, is that happening on purpose? Is this to challenge us, you know, to keep us on our toes and see how we react, you know? But again, it's you have to be one of those kind of people that adapts to things like that, and and is able to, to get some, some kind of result out at the end of it. Yeah.
So the first time you're on site, so I didn't realize that a HubSpot does, like, the solution engineers actually will go on site and do these demos in person.
Yeah.
Like, it was all remote, and that's incredible that they do. And when what was that like the first time you went into an office and situation normal, all messed up? Like, there was just, like, Wi-Fi wasn't working or something like that actually happened. How did you react? What did you change? Did you get the deal? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, like a lot of sweating, a lot of panicking, and obviously you're not alone in these kind of situations, which makes it quite good. So normally, you've got your AE next to you that can kind of filibuster away and kind of win you some time. Maybe you've got a couple of other technical people that are on your side and you're kind of working through problems, and you usually you can find some kind of workaround. I would say, like, just maybe on a more general perspective, I know there's maybe people that are watching that maybe, working in tech companies or wanting to work in tech companies. And I would say it's quite an interesting exercise in general, in that a lot of us have come through, obviously, like the COVID period and are used to now this comfortable situation of working from home. But when you do have to go into these kind of physical meetings, that as well is something that doesn't necessarily come naturally anymore. And it's maybe not something that we're trained to do, maybe in our onboarding, and that as well is it's a really, really interesting thing that I feel like I'm kind of getting better at it, but it's going back to that, this is how we're all working previously, shaking people's hand, looking people in the eye, but also as sales engineers, performing in that kind of situation, and being able to interact and with stakeholders, for example. Maybe there's going to be some people that are present in the room, some people that are going to be on the internet, on Teams or whatever, and being able to have that kind of interaction with every single person in the room, like you would comfortably from your desk at home on a Zoom meeting, is something that doesn't necessarily come naturally anymore. Now we've been through all the pandemic and everything like that. So that's something you kind of have to relearn, and it's definitely something that doesn't necessarily come easily anymore.
And in the music side of it, what is like the most ridiculous thing that you kind of seen on stage, or you bombed on stage or something like that? What's like where your Eureka moment was coming, you felt like, and it just kind of, it went the opposite direction?
Yeah, that's a really, really, really good question. I think one of the experiences that comes to mind, I think when you're in a band that's trying to break through, you have, obviously it's a bit like waves. So you have ups and a lot of downs. But, you have moments where you think, everything's going your way and it's going to happen. And then, the next, not at all. And one thing that I really remember is we were basically going around and touring in the back of like some kind of pickup truck kind of van that we bought cheap off like the local postal service. And the heating had stopped working a long time ago, I remember, and it was a bit of a nightmare to keep on the road. But anyway, we were doing a number of gigs, concerts in a row, and we played a really, really cool gig in Bristol in the UK. Really, really cool city. I don't know if you've ever been there, but very, very arty, very, really, really interesting history as well in the city. And we played this crazy gig on this kind of barge, like a massive boat in the kind of port there, the harbour, that they kind of converted into a gig venue. So it was probably like not massive, probably like a club venue, about 300, 400 people, but it was completely rammed. And we had this incredible reaction. We all got the classic, photos at the end of the gig like this, and we all went away thinking, oh my gosh, it's finally happening. And the next day we were programmed to play this kind of festival near Cambridge in the UK. And it was a baking hot day, which is obviously very, very rare in the UK, but really, really hot. And we were playing in this huge tent. And I remember nobody wanted to come in the tent because it was so hot. And we played to 2 people and 1 naked child who was dancing around. and we definitely felt like it's just one day you're top of the hill, the next day that's that was the first one that comes to mind. It was just so ridiculous.
So there's more band members in the world audience. Is that kind of right?
Oh, by far, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But
what kind of band was it? Was it like rock band, Britpop band? What kind of band are we talking?
No, it was, unfortunately, it was not as cool as that. It was like an electro pop, but it was very much in the part of kind of like an era in the UK where there's a lot of kind of electro dance music and this kind of crossover between electronic music and maybe more traditional like indie music.
Okay.
So we were definitely part of almost like a kind of musical trend in the UK, but it's definitely the images are, in the videos are, they make a lot of people laugh now, and it's good. I've got a few good anecdotes for nights out and stuff like that. So that's good.
more performers and audience. I don't know. That's definitely not something most people have experienced. And what's that? What does that feel like? I mean, like, what's that like? Talk me through the thoughts, the emotions there of your teammates, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think, again, I think it's quite good in a way, because I think it brings almost like, it hardens your skin in some ways, and it kind of, in the end, I think when you're in this kind of band, in this kind of situation, you need to kind of adapt to lots and lots of different situations. And it is quite a classic thing, isn't it? To hear that, a band's playing to maybe one person, the barmaid, and even the barmaid's not listening, So I think it's quite good. It's a good life lesson in some ways, to kind of harden your skin, and when you go through situations like that. So maybe it's not a bad thing.
And have you ever been in a room in HubSpot, virtual or in person, when there's more people on the HubSpot team than there were on the buying side, or anything like that, or no? That you could relate to?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I don't think so. No, normally I don't think it's really like our philosophy to be, compared to maybe other technological, competitors that I won't name. It's not really our philosophy to come, with like, hundreds of people on into a meeting and kind of feel like you're trying to intimidate them. It's not really our philosophy. We're a little bit more human in that respect. So I can't say that, we've ever outnumbered the number of people on the prospect side of things. It's usually, it's usually quite a good balance.
Pretty even. Okay. And what is like so, I mean, we talked a lot about mistakes here,
Yeah.
So tell me something like you're really, really proud of that you had in your musical career, like maybe when you were serving as an agent, and maybe something as a solutions engineer, kind of like what is something you're particularly proud of? Like, what are those amazing Eureka moments?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In terms of like musical career, I would say, well, I don't know, I wouldn't even call it a career really. Making it bigger than it is. My musical period, let's say, we achieved some things like, we were on national Radio 1, which was really, really cool. Yeah, Radio 1 in the UK, and we were on TV, like on the BBC and on Channel 4. So that was cool, because, at least your family can tune in and watch you or whatever, or your friends from home. So that was like quite a proud moment. And then from like a tech point of view, I would just say, like, for example, I actually currently work in the French market. So I live in France. I've been living in France for like 14 years now. Wow. And when I first moved over here, I spoke literally, a couple of words, and I've had to kind of work my way up from there. And it's taken a long time. And now I'm kind of at the position where I'm kind of working with some of our biggest prospects and clients on what we call like the corporate segment. So the equivalent of like enterprise clients. So I would say that, in terms of pride, I would just say that, like that, for example, I would, looking back and seeing this kind of route and seeing where I am now compared to where I was maybe like 10 years ago, and the kind of complex projects that we're now, working with, and having, personal kind of success as well, and being recognized has definitely been like, massive achievement for me.
Yeah. So just so everybody's clear, you're from the UK, but you work as a solutions engineer for HubSpot in France. Does that mean all of your presentations are in French and things
Yeah.
like. Wow. And how long have you been speaking French for? I mean, like, or learning French, developing a command of French.
So I would say, so obviously like I moved over here in like 2011, and I
Mhm.
would say that things started to click after maybe 3 or 4 years. But in terms of fluency, I can't really put like my finger on like when exactly I would say like I was fluent.
Right.
But yeah, I think in terms of like talking French with confidence, I would say maybe it's been 7 or 8 years now, like fully confident. I've been working obviously all through that period, and that
Yeah.
obviously really, really helped, because it's not just about the languages as well. It's maybe about customs and about the way people do business, etiquette, and going back to, for example, like formal business meetings and stuff like that. There's definitely a completely new way of doing business compared to maybe obviously the UK or the US or other countries, maybe China and Japan. Everyone does things in a different way. So it's kind of like having to restart from zero, really, and relearn a whole new way of working and communicating. That's taken quite a lot of time. But yeah, no, I'm really, really happy about where we're at now, and the different projects I'm working are really, really interesting. I would say that it's kind of an advantage as well to work with for an American tech company with an outlet in France and a big footprint in Europe. We're working with a lot of international companies as well. So the fact that you can kind of bring all of that, your experience and maybe obviously the language and everything like that to the table as well, and work on those kind of projects is probably quite a big positive.
And what are some of like the so let's talk about those a little bit. What are some of the exciting things that you're seeing now as a lead solution engineer at HubSpot? What are some of the exciting things that you're seeing that you're working on that prospects are asking you about? What are some of the great stories under the hood?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everyone's talking about it, obviously, like agentic
Yeah.
platform, agents, and what we're capable of doing now with agents is probably one of the biggest things. And the way that people are, the impact that's happening on having on businesses now is just monumental. And obviously, I would say, we can go back to the agent side of things, but I would also say, the way that people are searching for businesses, searching for a certain type of products as well with artificial intelligence is obviously completely changing the market, and especially from a marketing side of things. Marketers are now having to completely rethink their strategy and kind of adapt to this new way of working and making sure that their company, their brand is showing up in those responses. So there is a massive, shift in the industry. And I would say that that's probably, those are the best, definitely the two major subjects at the minute.
And that's kind of what HubSpot is really honing in on as well, right? Those areas are doubling down on it, and
Yeah.
that's going to push into the solutions engineering roles too. I mean, they're going to have to know those things, how they work. And does it ever get too much for you? Like all of like the updates that gets pushed in a product like HubSpot, or how do you keep up? Like what's your secret? Because we have no problem. We have no issue with that. We have a lot of problems with partners keeping up what they do all the time. So I know how it is for you. I mean, probably even more.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I would say definitely you have to be incredibly adaptable in this role, and you have to be on your game. You have to keep up. And like you said, the product evolves constantly. But as does the market, and the expectations of shareholders now, and, everything else, things are moving so quickly. And yeah, I think it's not just a question of our product, which is obviously already, like you said, quite a challenge to keep up with all of the updates, the new features, how to sell those features, how to value sell those features and put a business case together. That's a big challenge. But also, in terms of the market in general and seeing, where things are moving to, and trying to keep up with the pace of, and the demands of not just businesses, but the people they're selling to. That is a massive, massive challenge. So I would say, I take quite a lot of time. I usually block quite a lot of time in my week, not just to understand the new things that are coming out with the product, but also kind of test them. And, if I can talk to like the product managers here at HubSpot and get more information and, try and get ahead of the game as well before updates are coming out into like a beta release or whatever, but really try and anticipate those, then that can really, really help. Yeah.
And like, what resources do you use? I'm just like, look, the product team is not available to all of us, non HubSpot folks, right? So what resources specifically do you use to stay sharp that maybe the rest of us can use?
You basically, with HubSpot, you've got the possibility to activate all of the betas in advance. So we go through different like beta phases. So you can basically directly from your portal, you can basically like self-serve, see all of the different releases that are coming out, but then also activate those manually and start testing them out straight away. So I would say that's really, really good way as well. Obviously, it's great for us because we get that data and see how much things are being used and what things could be maybe improved on maybe a UX UI perspective. But it's really, really good as well for customers to maybe get ahead of the curve and start testing out these new features and seeing how they can like integrate them into their marketing or their sales campaigns.
Well, I mean, like, Thomas, where can people learn more about you?
I try to be as active as possible, like on LinkedIn. So try to keep things fresh and talk about new updates as well. But I also participate in a lot of marketing events, mainly here in France. So usually organized by like a different partners all around France. I'm doing a conference in Lyon, for example, in France at the end of the month, doing a keynote speech. So love talking about the product, but also anybody who wants to kind of get in touch and interact. I always respond to messages on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is probably the best place to hit me up.
Yeah, I mean, look, Thomas, it's not every day that first of all, the way we talked to is like a solutions engineer. I think you're the first one we've ever had on the show, so that's big. And to talk to somebody who's actually been on the BBC before, I mean, it's a very rare combination. So I appreciate you coming on and jamming with us in this capacity today.
No problem. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So everybody, if you liked it, get a hold of Thomas on LinkedIn. Hit him up for anything, music advice, HubSpot, anything you want. He can probably help you out with it. This has been another episode of Brabus 500, everybody, and thanks for listening. Take care.